Morning all. Richard Vobes here on the 18th of July 2022. It's my ChinWag this morning. A little bit later than I normally like. Just been running around a little bit. Anyway, here we are. And it's the middle of the heat wave here in the UK. And I want to ask you, are you coping with the heat? Are we able to survive this? Will we all suffer? Is this global warming? Is it something outside the norm? Or is it just a very nice, warm, sunny day and we all need to calm down a bit? The news and the mainstream media have been telling us that this is a new sort of unprecedented situation. It's likely to go up into the 40s today. I was out yesterday with the lovely Julia filming, and I kept an eye because we were in a black van and planning to stay overnight. We didn't actually, for reasons which will be apparent in the Bald Explorer video when it comes out. I was keeping an eye on the temperature because obviously I'd been told by everybody left, right and centre that we were likely to roast alive in the temperatures that were going to come upon us. And I kept seeing 27 degrees, which actually was very nice. 27 degrees. Is that all? It's not even in the 30s. It did reach. I was travelling through East Sussex at the south of England, so maybe it was warmer in other places. I wouldn't like to be in a city. I was in the countryside in which the greenery and the grass and the trees were absorbing much of the heat, and of course we could get into the shade. So I wasn't in the city, or any cities or large towns in which the concrete and the pavements and the buildings would be radiating that heat even more. Thank goodness, which kind of says that actually that greenery and natural habitats is probably a better place to be when such temperatures are up. Although I gather that A&E, I've since discovered, was rammed last night, and I dare say it'll be rammed again tonight with people who've been down to the beach, been drinking alcohol in their gardens or on the beach or in open spaces, dehydrating and being attacked by the heat. And I just wonder, are we coping, or are we just simply wimps these days, or are we actually just stupid? I think anybody who was drinking copious amounts of alcohol and sitting on a beach with your completely unprotected was possibly a bit daft if then you suffered from heat stroke and ended up in A&E, especially after we've had all the warnings that have come in. Be interested in your thoughts on that. Are you somebody who suffers with the heat? Do you not like the heat? Do you find that you have to be indoors? But are you somebody who is able to regulate yourself and think, do you know what, actually it is a bit hot, I'm not going to take the risk? Or are you somebody who just thinks, well, do you know what, I don't care, I'm going out, the sun is shining, oh, it's not going to get me, 40 degrees, nah, it's nothing, mate, I'm going to go out there. So I'd be interested, how did you cope? Have you coped? Are you coping? Or is it difficult? Or are we just all wimps? You know, in my mind, we haven't had a beautiful summer for a long, long time. And it's about time we did. We keep being promised that we've got a bit of global warming. We keep being told that the planet is warming up and that this is the sort of thing that's happening. But over the last 5 years, I can't actually remember a sustained period in the summer in which the sun has been shining very nice. Now, I, with the Bald Explorer, go out filming quite a lot, and I much prefer to film on a sunnier day, or at least a bright overcast day, than the dull, miserable days. And I can tell you that I had noticed that we were having more miserable, dull days recently, in recent times, than perhaps when I was a kid, or in my younger days, in my 20s, when I had children, well, actually in my 30s when my kids were young, and we would take them down to the seaside. There seemed to be more sunshiny days then. So I'm absolutely thrilled. I love the sun. So I'm not terribly worried. Look at me, I'm in a waistcoat and I still go out into I was driving around inside the van at 27 degrees with no AC, whatever it's called, not alternating current, air conditioning, that's the one, in the van, windows open, just trying to save a bit of diesel, you know. And I was absolutely fine. But I do know that other people, depending on their health and their conditions, may be suffering more than I, and their whole complexion and all of that. We're all different people, and I've got no qualms with anybody who is suffering, because some people will suffer greater than others. But generally, is what I'm asking, are we all wimps? You know, a little bit of sun, the mainstream media hop on it, it's another horror story, it's another thing to make us frightened. This new red zone is going everywhere, we're all going to die, people. I kept hearing on the news, and I don't have television, but I heard it on the news that I was watching on YouTube, was that even not just old people, but ordinary people, I don't know how they put it now, people in their 20s and 30s are likely to die if they go out in these 40 degrees. Well, it has yet to reach 40 degrees, so I can't really comment and say how badly that would be. But most people would have some form of shelter to go to, but perhaps it's not wise to go and sit right out into the midday sun. Mad dogs and Englishmen. Is that you? Interested in your comments on that. Let's have a look at some of the comments that we've had in recent times and react to those. So this is, have you had second thoughts about you know what? Response, Maidenhill Motorsport says, I had both my jabs, but not because I thought I needed them, but because my work said I wouldn't get paid if I was off ill with COVID, which I just think is absolutely terrible. They don't say, or do they? I don't think it's a thing that if you happen to have any other sort of, you know, if you had polio, and I mean, not, I don't think you can get it. Is that the one that we've eradicated, or is that the one that's slowly creeping back in? Or measles? Maybe it's measles. But if you've had any of the, or TB, if you managed to get TB but you hadn't had a TB inoculation, would they be doing the same thing there? I think that's so dreadful that a company, no jab, no job, that whole process, that is ridiculous, especially if more proof comes out that actually the vaccine was not worth the file it was put into and the needle that was wasted sticking it into people's arms. So my reasons have nothing to do with a health risk or being scared. It was purely money reasons. I don't think the jabs have made much of a difference for people getting it, and I think it would have run its course pretty much soon. And I totally agree with you. I think that the herd immunity, like so many things, would have weakened the virus, because eventually it would have mutated and found a way that it can stay in the host and not do too much damage to the host. You just get a bit ill, like the common cold and influenza, all of those things. You know, influenza, it's not nice, not very pleasant, but at the end of the day, unless you're in the very small bracket of people who would be suffering from it, then most of us are genuinely okay. Kemi for Prime Minister, changing my mind. Bible Reading Outreach says hashtag Kemi for PM. I haven't really been keeping much of an eye. I've been quite busy with the Bald Explorer stuff and, of course, this. So I haven't been terribly much watching what the candidates have been up to, but I'm interested to see what happens in the next thing. I don't know that all of them did terribly well in the Channel 4 debate, but I don't have television, so I've only seen snippets of it. And most of those debates are really, to my mind, a bit of a waste of time. All this nonsense they were asking, how do we know we can trust you? And was Boris an honest man? It's like, Boris is a yesterday story. Let's not look back. Let's just concentrate about who we want. And as Neil Oliver asked, I was pretty much, I don't know if you saw his recent piece on GB News, where he was saying, where is the candidate who will promise us not to lock down and not to make sure that not to close schools in the future? Where is the candidate who's not going to mandate a vaccine? That's very much the candidate I want to have for Prime Minister. Excuse me. Got a bit of hay fever at the moment. Nick Stacey says, have you had second thoughts? It says, why give the time and space? So we're talking about these keyboard warriors. I've not commented for a bit as the channel is going away from landscape, heritage and nature, etc. Well, this is the Vogue show. So Vogue show was never really landscape, heritage and nature, to be honest with you. And people do get a bit confused. They may be subscribed to the Bald Explorer and they may be subscribed to the Vogue show. This one has always been, in the past, it's just been a live show. Now it's a sort of daily discussion on all sorts of things, life, the universe and everything, as I like to think about, and what's currently in the news, if we can. So there you are. So it's not really about the landscape, but you are still so interesting and worth watching, says Nick. Thank you very much. That's a very nice thing to say. Great, you and the lovely Julia have got together. You just twinkle together. Yes, now Julia would be here in the studio today, actually, but she has actually been taken ill, sadly, with kidney infection, which is why I knew, because we did have cause to ring up A&E to see what the situation was and also find out if the symptoms... she's all right, by the way, just to let you know. She's okay. She's just going to get some antibiotics and stuff, and she'll be fine. But last night she was in a bit of pain, so we were just taking the precautions, and we discovered that A&E was absolutely rammed with people basically having heat stroke. And many of those probably self-inflicted, although that's me speculating. That's not an actual fact, so I'm putting that on the table. Anyway, me thinks it was only a matter of time. Moonlighting moment. Enjoyed the recent trip to East Sussex. Thank you very much, Nick. That's very kind. Digger the Dump says, enjoy the words. If you have no reply, we all love a challenge. Thank you. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I very much appreciate it anyway. Joe Gaming Girly says, in terms of why do haters keep coming back? Exactly. Go watch something else. There's no need to write anything nasty. That, I guess, is pitched to the haters. Also, if you think you can do better, then do your own channel and then find it's not so easy. And actually, that is so much the point. So many of these haters who tell me, and not just haters, but people who want to give you criticism or want to tell you how to do things or improve things. I have a look and see, have you done any videos yourself? Have you any experience in internet creation? And mostly, no, they haven't. And so it's just spouting off, really. So, yeah, I tend not to give them much credit. Most of them end up in spam and they don't get answered. And once they're in spam, I don't even see them. So you often get emails from people giving me a bit of a piece of their mind. The great thing is, and what they don't really appreciate is, I don't get to see it. So it makes it much easier for me, and it's a bigger laugh on them. And ENG, interesting name. Is that news? What was it? Electronic news gathering in the old days, ENG. I don't know if it's the same now in the digital world. I had to question many of the grainy, questionable video stroke TV clips that appeared, especially in Italy in the early days. I guess this is the early days of the of the virus. I compared national annual death stats, etc. They spoke with a family undertaker, questioned why a death can be classed as a COVID death within 28 days, having been killed by a bus. I mean, this is the absurdity of that whole situation. I am angry they frightened people to the extent of being scared to live life. Yes, there's a nasty cold going around, and that is how we used to deal with it in our past lives. Blown out of all proportion by bleeding so-called experts. And the annoying thing I used to find during those 2 years of the COVID business was that the government and the mainstream media were all taking one set of experts and not listening to other experts who equally had a story, and letting us work out what we as a public wanted to do. I was fine with them saying, look, actually, this is this side of the story, and then there's this side of the story, and we advise this side of the story. That's fine. But you're at liberty to do whatever you like, because we are a democratic society. But no, it was as if even questioning the science we were presented was to be seen as somebody who was incredibly stupid. And that's not how science works. Science works about questioning it and challenging it all the time. And at no point before were we treated as if we were complete idiots for doing the most reasonable thing and going, okay, that's an expert opinion, but I want to challenge that, and I want to drill down and find out why you think that, and what do you think about the other side of the argument. But we were made to feel that we couldn't even do that, and in fact, the big giant tech companies were shutting people down, and the wokery people were cancelling, which is such a stupid term, those people who would dare to challenge it, which I found abhorrent and totally ridiculous. And then these people are putting themselves up as being, well, you know, we're sensible and exemplary members of the public or of the mainstream media or of the government, because we're actually telling you that you're stupid for questioning what we're telling you. Well, that's just stupid in its own self. That's why I was asking, have people changed their minds? It's very difficult to change your mind when you've put yourself on the level or in front of the public and said, actually, I believe 100% in the virus, I believe 100% in the vaccine, I believe 100% we should be doing this. It's very difficult for people to save face. It's a brave person who will say, do you know what, I've actually changed my mind, I may have been wrong, and what have you. But unfortunately, I'm on the situation, I don't say unfortunately, but I'm in the situation in which I was questioning it from the start, as you know. So I haven't had to change my mind on that, but I have changed my mind on many other things, as you will know. Steady Red says, I was in hospital for 3 months and was tested time after time. I never tested positive. Am I worried about the virus? No, because I stopped watching TV and the radio news about a month into lockdown. I got my news from the UK government website, and statistics work for me. And what was fascinating, actually, I think, is that the government websites were publishing statistics that if you examined them, instead of listening to their spin on them, you could work out that actually there wasn't as many excess deaths as we were all being told. And once you'd worked out, as ENG had said, that actually there was a lot of misdiagnosis going on, that somebody had died of COVID when actually they'd been hit by a bus. It's very interesting, isn't it? That moment just before the bus hit them, they suddenly died of COVID, and for a split second were just in midair dead before the bus hit them. It's crazy how that works, isn't it? It's mind-boggling. It seems to be a lot of cases in which a lot of people died just a fraction before perhaps falling off a cliff. Oh, it's COVID. And then they fall off the cliff. No, it wasn't them falling off the cliff that killed them. It was the COVID, you stupid person. Don't you realise? COVID's killed everybody. Nobody's died of influenza, apparently. It's a bit bizarre. A couple more before we go. Andrew Anthill says, a wise chap once told me, listen to the critical, ignore the cynical. And sometimes it's just trying to work out who's being cynical for the sake of and who's being critical for the and why be critical. That's what I often, unless it's been invited. That's I mean, I can understand if somebody sets up a channel and wants to do this is a crit channel. We're all going to listen to me criticize such and such, and then we can have a debate about whether I'm right or you're right. That I have no problem with. But why do people feel the need to criticize something that's put up for their entertainment? If they don't like it, you just go, that's not for me. I had an email from somebody who I read out their comment yesterday about criticism. They thought that at the end of it, when I said, oh, go on, bog off, that I was talking to them. I wasn't. And I thought I'd made that clear, that I was talking to that Shelley Dawes person. And they thought I was using their thing about because I thought it was a good point about, you can be criticised and make your point. But they seem to have taken that too personally. So, be careful. It's not always aimed at you. Some people are hypersensitive. So just be careful. Anyway, they said, you've criticised me. And so now, it's funny because, it's like they want to criticise you. and then you criticise them, and it's like, oh, well, in that case, I'm off. You say, well, hang on a minute. It's a two-way conversation. Don't start something if you don't like the response. And finally, Volvo Mojo, such a great name, says, just forget the trolls, Richard. Love your channels. And that's it. Yes, we won't be mentioning the trolls anymore. So, the heat. Are you a wimp? Are you suffering? Or are you going to march through? Are you just going to take sensible precautions and drink plenty, keep in the shade when necessary, and see how we go? Or are you going to be sitting there like a piece of jelly going, oh my God, the mainstream media have told me that there's a heat wave coming. I'm not going to do anything. I can't. I'm going to put myself under the bedclothes. What would we do, ladies and gentlemen, if we didn't have the mainstream media telling us what to do and how to live our lives? Do you think maybe we would just use our common sense? I think we would. I think we'd be probably a lot better without them. Till next time, bye-bye.